Hello again, everybody. I am back with another Global League match. This match, like almost all of my Global League matches for whatever reason, was Tier 2, and therefore involved Max and Eagle. So, one reason I wanted to show this match was that I think I actually made several major blunders near the beginning, and I wanted to talk about those and why I think that they are mistakes and how we'll avoid them in the future. I think I had a good strategy, but I screwed up a couple of times when it came to implementing it. This map, Tornado Road, is a very visually interesting and satisfying one to look at, but I wouldn't say it's a favorite of mine to play on. I'll get into more detail about that as we go along. For Tier 2, Olaf is banned on this map because he's way too strong, which basically just leaves Eagle and Max. Grit's an option too, but he's not very good here. Now in terms of win rates, Max is slightly better, but they're both fairly viable here, as you can see. I looked at my opponent, Trash Queen's stats, and saw that Trash Queen really likes Eagle. I felt very confident that I could win an Eagle mirror against this opponent. I felt less certain I would win as Max against Eagle, so I chose Eagle here, but my opponent picked Max. Now, I have talked several times before about Eagle and Max. They have a very fun dynamic, I think. Max has one of the strongest day-to-day abilities in the entire game. Almost all of his units have plus 100% attack power, which is amazing. He also has very strong CO powers and superpowers. In comparison, Eagle has basically nothing day-to-day. He has pretty good battlecopters, but that's about it. So Max's vehicles can easily beat Eagle's in a fair fight, and Max can use that advantage to either try to secure more properties and more income to overwhelm Eagle that way, or just destroy his entire army with a CO power or superpower if he can break through his lines. That is how Max wins this matchup. Either destroy Eagle's army before it gets built up in the first place, or secure an overwhelming income advantage. Eagle, on the other hand, is like one of those obnoxious anime protagonists who always pulls out a last-second win with some kind of made-up nonsense. As long as he has his army intact, his superpower, which is the best one in the game, can win him anything that is even close to a draw, and even turn around most slight losses. Getting double moves with all of your vehicles is absolutely incredible. So, my game plan for this match is to try to fight for a tie. I don't need to be winning, just roughly at parity with Max. Keep my vehicles consolidated where Max can't easily destroy them, and then run him over with my superpower when I'm good and ready. A good capture order is one that goes hand in hand with your strategy. So here I'm choosing one that lets me get the maximum number of tanks out as fast as possible. Now the comm towers in this map are pretty interesting. You can see, I'm sure, that we each actually start off with one of them, but they'll tend to change hands fairly early on in the match. I'm not going to prioritize stealing the opponent's comm tower, because I need all the income I can get out those tanks that I talked about. If my army is short on tanks, Max can secure an easy early win. My opponent is going for the comm tower earlier than me, but no matter what you do with your initial capture order, the comm towers will almost certainly switch sides. You might think, looking at things, that it'd be pretty easy to keep your comm tower because it's on your 2-base side, which is usually your strong side. But on this map, things are actually a little bit different. Because that comm tower is too close to the opponent's base and the opponent's airport, and too far away from one of your 2 bases. So the supposed weak side there can actually overwhelm the comm tower pretty reliably. This comm tower is not even that close to Black Hole's front base, for example. So from what I observe, it's a question of when, rather than if, the comm towers change sides in this map. On the other hand, because you start off with one comm tower already, it doesn't take that much investment of resources to end up with both, at least for a little while. So going for both comm towers here is lower risk, but also lower reward than on many maps. It did not surprise me at all that my opponent, as Max, went for both comm towers. But a Max with 2 comm towers is very scary to deal with. So anticipating that, my plan was to concentrate my forces in the south, try to take the comm tower and take out a portion of Max's army there with my concentrated forces, and then thrust that army northward into the center where most of the properties are. The center in this map is just jam-packed with properties, whereas the north and south, besides the comm towers, really don't have that much that's viable to fight over. The cities north and south of the mountains are viably contestable, but the other ones are mostly too close to one player's base for the other player to contest them unless they're absolutely crushing the game already. So, as you can see, I'm not trying to get out any kind of early recon, I'm just saving my money to get out tanks. As many tanks as I can afford as fast as possible, so that Max can't overwhelm me. Trash Queen, though, this turn goes for a recon. Now, in my opinion, recons are not that great on this map. I'm not saying they're bad by any means, certainly not for Max with those 20% attack power bonuses. But you can see that the terrain really doesn't favor them here. Trash Queen's recon can either walk out of the way through this forest and then double back to get to my comm tower, or slog across endless plains and forests to get to it. Either way, it takes a pretty long time to arrive anywhere. A recon built up here instead could get into position pretty fast, I guess, but what's it going to accomplish? It's sure not going to secure that comm tower very well. If I'm getting anything out there early, it'd be a tank, not an infantry. I'm not going to build any recons myself for a while here. I think that building recons early on is a fairly bad idea as equal against Max, because Max can so easily instant kill your recons with his tanks. And I think it would be fair to say that having good vision is slightly more important when going on offense than when playing defense. But here I make the biggest mistake of the game. It is such a bad break from my strategy. I talked about how I plan to focus my forces on the bottom front. Well, here I just built my first tank on the top. It was a moment of forgetfulness, and the instant I clicked it, I realized what a bad mistake it had been. Because I can't afford to reinforce it up top. I need more forces on the bottom to take that comm tower. Fighting for the top comm tower would be suicide against Max, and a lone tank is almost no use against Max. My tanks are just too much weaker than his. And I'm not going for any aggressive captures over here which I could back up with that tank either. Everything that I'm going to be capturing I'll get pretty much no matter what. So the top tank is pretty useless, but more importantly I'm down one tank in the bottom now. I try to get flexible and make up for this, but I know that I have made a big mistake here. So the lesson for me here is, don't take a long break between thinking of your strategy and actually executing it. As Nietzsche said, the commonest form of stupidity is to forget one's purpose. So, Trash Queen builds a tank up top, which is smart of her, I would say. She's going for double comm towers, and that tank makes it super easy to defend the top comm tower. If I was foolish enough to try to interrupt that comm tower capture, I would get blown away immediately, with her having first strike, better terrain, and plus 30% attack power. Incidentally, that actually happened to Trash Queen on a previous match that she played on this map. She's trying to do to me what her opponent did to her, but I'm not falling for it. In any case, I continue my steady advance toward the comm tower and just doing all the captures that are convenient. More money, more tanks. But I'm still not sure what to do with my top tank. And this I think is another mistake that I made. I kept trying to find ways to make it be useful up top, but there really wasn't going to be one. It's a sunk cost. I should have just driven it southward for 3 turns and had it be guaranteed useful down there. Maybe it could have helped prevent Trash Queen from getting into the middle if I just rushed that with a tank or something like that. It's an idea at the very least, whereas what I have up top is not really an idea. It's a hope. A hope that she gives me an opportunity, and hope is not a strategy. I do at least build my second tank in the south, so that is something, but I should have 2 tanks down there. So, Trash Queen is going for the comm tower there, and I can't interrupt it. If I was in this situation in a different CO matchup, playing as not equal against not Max, I might well risk a tank to try to interrupt that. But as equal against Max, no way. I desperately need to keep all of my vehicles alive if I can. In this matchup, I think losing my first tank immediately could just cost me the game. Max could just confidently rampage forward at that point with nothing to worry about. As long as she doesn't know what I have, Trash Queen has to be at least somewhat cautious. Now of course I didn't know this during the game, but Trash Queen had just built a Max Artillery. That wasn't quite as big a surprise as you might expect though, even though Max Artillery are terrible. From a few of her replays I know that Trash Queen just loves artillery and spams them out whenever possible. So I wasn't too surprised that even as Max she'd get at least 1 artillery. But I think there was another reason that she built it too. That was all the money that Trash Queen had that turn. She had enough to build an artillery and that left her with 0. I think this is a common intellectual pitfall that people fall into in this game, the feeling that you must spend all of your money every single turn. Now there absolutely is a benefit to not saving your money. If you save your money, you end up being weaker for a turn a few turns later when whatever you could have built but didn't doesn't hit the front lines where it would have. But on the other hand, having weaker reinforcements for 1 turn is just not as bad as being weaker forever because you built a bad unit, which is often the case with a Max Artillery. So although I think it's usually advisable to build a good thing now rather than a really good thing next turn, I would not choose to build a bad thing now over a really good thing next turn. Even base skipping and getting out another tank could have been preferable in this case, I think. Alright, so I move on to that mountain to try to see if Trash Queen has a recon in the area already, just in case she happened to put it over there. But she was smarter than that. I still suspect that there is a recon out there somewhere, and so I move accordingly. So, as I go for the comm tower and the fringe captures, I take care to put my tank into a position that a recon can't see it in until it's too late. And meanwhile I try to advance as many infantry as I can into the center as fast as possible. At this stage I care more about positioning and getting a good presence in the center than I do about getting as much money as fast as possible. Up top I make another big mistake with my tank, putting it on that city. I was just trying to find some use for it, so I thought, maybe Max will position a tank aggressively near the comm tower where I can first strike it next turn or something like that. But no, this was just stupid. I talked about how useful it was to have Max not know what I have. Risking revealing that tank like that is not at all worth it. I should again have just given up the top and driven southward. Anyway, this turn hurts. The opponent gets the comm tower, and then uses it to strike my infantry with a 40% attack power bonus recon. With 40% attack power, as happened here, Max reduces capturing infantry to 3 HP pretty regularly, and to 4 or fewer all the time. That's really significant. Most people's recons reduce infantry to only 5 HP, which is really not that bad. That infantry can still capture in 2 turns if somebody else drives the recon off. But at 3 HP, you need 4 whole turns to finish capturing that thing, even if the recon is driven off. There's no way you'll get away with that. At some point in those 4 turns, Max will easily get an infantry or something over here and finish me off. So completing the capture without doing a join is pretty hopeless. And having to divert a crucial early infantry to do a join capture is pretty devastating to my economy. Alright, so as you can see, right now we're both putting a fair number of guys into the middle. I will say focus on that, but Trashcan will actually get distracted, which is a crucial advantage to me. With the exception of that northern tank, I did stick to my strategy here, and that served me pretty well because it was fairly well thought out to begin with, I think. Anyway, down south my economy is going to suffer a lot, because not only do I need to sacrifice an infantry to do a join capture to maybe get that comm tower, I had to give up the city that I was about to get otherwise. Now if I had a second tank down here, I wouldn't be in this predicament. I could easily finish off his recon, or shoot his infantry, or form a wall. I could even have blocked the recon to begin with maybe. But, because I screwed up with my first tank, I don't have those options. The one saving grace is that not having built a tank in the south means I did build an infantry down there. Now in the center, you'll notice I've actually given up an easy capture to advance closer to the middle instead. Now that it won't affect my vehicle building very much, I'm willing to forego a little bit of income to get a better position in the middle before Max gets there. I want to get captures done before Max vehicles show up and start shooting everything. I do finally decide to shift my northern tank toward the south and the middle where it can be more useful, but too late, should have done this a while ago. There are 2 reasons why I built a battlecopter in the south this turn. Number 1, I think I'll need to defend myself against tanks pretty imminently. Number 2, I really want to build an infantry from that southern factory to mitigate the economic damage that I'm taking. I've got to go capture those cities that doing the join capture cost me. Alright, so, Trashcan could have sacrificed her capture to interrupt my comm tower guy, but I think she made the right choice to not do so. It wouldn't really have slowed me down because that fresh infantry is coming up anyway. Now, the fact that Trashcan did not attack me with a tank this turn told me that she definitely has one up top instead, so I made the right choice in not attacking her comm tower capturer up there. I would have been wiped out if I tried that attack. Unfortunately for me, she is going to get the contestable cities near the mountains in both the north and the south. Again, if I had another tank in the south, I could have stopped that. The Max artillery really doesn't have anything to do up top. Pretty useless. And for now, both of us are still just swarming infantry into the middle. She builds double tanks this turn, but she tends to split her forces as you probably noticed, whereas at least for this game I'm concentrating all of mine in one area. For Max, splitting things up is a little bit more okay than it would be for Eagle, I think. And this map does, I would say, kind of encourage having split forces to some extent. The pipes as obstacles and the great distance from your bases on one side to the other side makes it so that you almost have to have 2 separate forces, unless you just do nothing but go for the middle. That's one thing I don't really like about the map. So this turn I get a lot of captures. I'm doing fairly well economically, but I know that I could be doing better. If I've been able to stop Max's capture in the south, and not have to sacrifice an infantry to a join capture, I would probably be ahead on the economy now. I keep working on the comm tower, but here I'm forced to put a tank in what I know is terrible danger to form a wall for the comm tower capturer. It has to be done, I don't like it at all, but I'm just forced to sacrifice a lot to get the comm tower now, and it all kind of comes back to that one initial mistake. My copter can stay hidden at the very least and be in position to reinforce the tanks if they come under attack, which I expect that they will. With this position for my copter, that recon really can't scout it feasibly, so that's what I'm counting on. Keeping it secret, having it be a fun surprise. My top tank does start driving southward, but not as fast as it probably should have. I'm still thinking about covering that infantry over there. But I mean, at this point, even if I get a first strike against a Max tank with me having a city bonus, Max has easily had enough time to build up several tanks in that area, so it'd still get torn apart in the follow-up attacks. I do build an artillery up there now. I would say that artillery are really not that great on this map, which is why Max has the highest win rate on this map and Grit has a pretty bad one and is in kind of the bottom of tier 2 here. But up top here, there are some spots I could put it. You know, sheltered by the pipe or by the forest, things like that. There are good defensive positions for them. It just can't really move forward from there in any kind of reasonable way. But I'm not really trying to push forward, I'm trying to just hold this area cost effectively. So, the real fighting now begins. Max scouts me very intelligently, and then just wrecks my tank, almost instant killing it and taking no retaliation whatsoever. Max with 2 comm towers is pretty crazy. And because of that comm tower harass, Max is ahead of me on economy 2. It's pretty normal for player 2 to be ahead 1 property compared to player 1, but if player 2 is routinely ahead by 2 properties or more, it means player 1 has messed up in some way, or been harassed in this case. And she builds more tanks, which is a pretty solid choice. Now you might want to build an anti-air this turn, but doing so would involve sacrificing something else, because she doesn't have enough money to build an anti-air, and a tank, and an infantry. In any case, I do get the comm tower finally. So you can see that, as I said, they do pretty much inevitably change hands. Even if you're playing as Eagle against Max, you will get the comm tower eventually. But I suffered pretty badly getting it. Max's initial harassment cost almost nothing to Max and really badly hurt me, so very successful. Although again, she wouldn't have gotten away with it if I'd had that extra tank. Both of our economies continue to grow pretty rapidly at this stage. Down south I use my battlecopter as planned. I lose a tank, Max loses the tank. I'm not doing so badly so far. Again, if I had another tank, I'd be standing in that city rather than having to leave it open where Max can drop up another tank and attack me, as is about to happen. I really can't emphasize enough how every single problem in this game came from that one initial mistake, basically. Up top, as you can see, I form a wall around my artillery. I know that I'm revealing it going past that mountain, but I really had no way to keep it secret in this case because that mountain scouts too well for this general area. I couldn't keep it secret without having it be in any kind of useful position. Plus, honestly, I'm okay with her knowing that it's there. The point is to make that place look unpalatable to attack, or to make her commit a lot of resources to attacking it. If she sends, say, battlecopters over there, she's not sending them into the middle. I do continue to go hard building units in the south as was originally planned. I know that I need to do so because almost certainly Max has reinforcements coming up. Probably a tank, maybe an anti-air. But if I commit hard, and my opponent splits her forces, I should be able to succeed as it originally planned. Trash Queen does, of course, build an anti-air this turn, knowing that she needs it now. It would have been good for her to have one a turn earlier, but you know, it was sensible, or at least arguably sensible, to wait and get 2 tanks out instead, since it made a better sense for the amount of money that she had. She gets to blast my tank once again. It's not quite as painful as last time now that I'm on slightly better terrain and she doesn't have double comm towers anymore, but it's still really bad for me. Expected, but really bad. It is a bluff though, she doesn't actually have an anti-air handy. Now one thing you might observe here is that Max takes a lot of infantry that were moving toward the center and swings them southwardish instead. And I think that was a mistake by Trash Queen. She might be trying to fight for the comm tower again, but if so, that's a mistake. That's not happening. Those troops should have gone to the center and kept capturing things there, like mine are doing. I think she's being overly cautious up top with her formations. There's no way that I, an Eagle player, am going to attack into that nightmare of Max tanks. I do some scouting, and then I think I see an interesting maneuver that can help me get away with taking another tank away from Max. It's a somewhat clever idea, I would say. I thought through this formation pretty well. But then I made a mistake and failed to implement my plan. So this tank is aggressively positioned here to be part of a wall, plus it's just attacking that infantry for a little bit of scratch damage. I then tank down Trash Queen's tank with a battlecopter and a fresh tank, wall for the copter with infantry, but here's the big mistake. I attack with that infantry. Very foolish. The original plan was to just stand there with the infantry and have it be a wall. But again, I took a break, came back, and made a mistake. The reason it's a big mistake is that if Max has both a tank and an anti-air, which is quite plausible, then Max can now drive up and kill my injured infantry with the tank, and then drive the anti-air through to kill the battlecopter, and that would be catastrophic for me. So that attack by me destroyed my carefully calculated risk. All just to do what? 500 worth of damage to an infantry? Not at all worth it. So again, Don't formulate your strategy, then take a long break, and then try to actually make your move. Because you may come back and make individually sensible moves that don't actually fit together. Luckily, Trash Queen actually is not in position to capitalize with both the tank and an anti-air at the same time. She was bluffing, and I've called her bluff here. Now here I build my first MD tank, which is fairly early, I would say. As I said in my game against Starduster, I think that MD tanks are more effective against Max than against most COs. He can't counter with artillery, and his coppers don't do enough more damage to really be a good counter either. So he's kind of forced to build MD tanks, which Eagle can counter pretty well. Eagle can have artillery, and for that matter his coppers are pretty good too. I think MD tanks are also a good follow-up after you build a battlecopter, because you know the enemy will want to build an anti-air there if they haven't already, and then an MD tank can just instant kill an anti-air. So I try to force the opponent to build things that I have counters ready for. So I was waiting pretty anxiously for this attack here, expecting to lose my battlecopter, but luckily that's not what actually happened, because Trash Queen did not have an anti-air in position in time. She'd been bluffing. She doesn't have a way to break through, so she just does first strikes, which, hurts, but isn't anywhere near as bad. She gets pretty lucky interrupting that capture there. Chance of that is only about 1/3 if you have one comm tower. Oh well. I did at least see the recon pull back to get repairs, which confirms my guesses up until now about where it had been. I've lost a pretty heavy number of infantry here, but as Eagle I would say my infantry are more expendable than for most COs. The vehicles are really the crucial thing. If infantry die, but vehicles live as Eagle, it's probably pretty good. If a lot of vehicles survive, I'll win in the end. As I'd hoped, Max continues to be cautious up top. She really doesn't know what I have over there. She never did see my tank. She doesn't know how many tanks I have over there, she doesn't know what else I might have, so she plays it safe, which serves me pretty well here. I did have my tank in position to help out if Max did attack this turn. The threat of an army hidden in the fog is a pretty big deal in this game, which is why it was so important that my tank did not actually get killed early on. So up top, my artillery goes for the free hit on her infantry, I finish it off, and that's when I see, oh wow, she has a max artillery and is in range of me. This is a very happy turn for me, because I see how much stuff Trash Queen has committed up in the top. That is exactly what I was hoping for, and doing the math I realized she must have almost nothing in the middle. This is just perfect. I'm actually beating her in combat damage done, which is absolutely insane for Eagle fighting against Max. And I managed to tie up about half of her forces, as I planned, fighting basically nothing, while I prepare to move into the middle. So despite that initial mistake, my plan ultimately worked perfectly. So in the middle I can confidently move in, I can scout the infantry, interrupt that capture, get some nice first strikes on Max's infantry, and I know that Max has pretty much nothing but a recon there to stop me. In the south I don't overextend, I pull back and shift toward the middle, but I leave some bait in range of my new MD tank. I want her to walk up and attack that 3 HP tank with one of her full HP tanks or anti-airs, then I'll just wipe her out. My infantry that goes in the mountain doesn't actually attack, because I did the math and realized that if I don't attack, at 5 HP, she can't actually kill me without committing either a vehicle or both of her infantry. And that might even bait a vehicle to be in MD tank range on the other side of the mountain. We'll see. Anyway, I can't escape, so I'm just trying to force her to overcommit people to killing that infantry off. And that scouting did a great job. It tells me where her anti-air is, so I know where is safe and where is not safe, so I'm able to just freely shift out of range. The middle fights are going to go great for at least a turn or two, because I know that Max just has nothing there, because if she has a bunch of things in the bottom and a bunch of things in the top, she can't have anything in the middle. Fighting near these black boats is kind of cool, by the way, because it lets you get mid-battle healing, which is interesting at the very least. Not really that impactful, but interesting tactically. Now, up top I'm going to build myself a pretty unusual wall. Having used my infantry to attack, I didn't have enough to actually build a proper wall. But I know that she doesn't know that. She doesn't have a recon. She can't see this forest. If I just stand like this, she kind of has to assume that there's a person in that forest. And if she does call that bluff, and does attack from that forest, this MD tank can then counter-strike her. So it's kind of a win-win for me. The only thing that she could do is she could use her CO power and then break through my wall from the non-forest side pretty easily. I can't really stop that, but she probably won't want to do that to take out just one artillery. So, in fairness, her artillery does get a shot. It was not completely worthless. Its existence will also be kind of a deterrent to my medium tank later on too, admittedly. In the bottom, she does wipe out my infantry, but she takes the bait, and puts the anti-air in my range too. So I'm going to lose infantry, she's going to lose vehicles. I can happily agree to that trade. And although she does get a few attacks off in the middle, I know that I'm winning there too. So my middle grabbing plan is working so far. And I also now know that I'm only about one property behind Eagle on income, which I think is about the best you can hope for as Eagle playing against Max. She might be feeling pinched for those considerations too and chooses to attack into my artillery at this point. She is correct that she can totally overwhelm me there eventually, but it's still going to be pretty costly. It wasn't the best way to do that attack either, I don't think. The best thing for her to do would probably just be to ignore the artillery entirely and shift over into the middle instead, but she can't really know that that's the best thing to do necessarily. One problem I am facing this game is that I am going blind from losing all my infantry one by one. Max with the comm tower is just too good at killing my infantry. I can't really seem to keep them alive. So I often had to move units around just to scout, which is really not efficient, not the way I'd like to be playing, but it was kind of a necessary evil in this case. If the choice is inefficient scouting versus losing all your vehicles, inefficient scouting is the way to go. Okay, so at this point you can see I'm only behind by about 12,000 or so in value, which is really not that bad. That's basically just her player 2 advantage there. My good combat damage has offset some of my bad economic start. I am behind on unit count by a good amount, which is bad, but it's almost all infantry that died. Furthermore, a lot of the enemy's units that they have are pretty badly injured. It is really painful to be behind on unit count, but it's still a pretty good situation to be in overall for Eagle against Max at this stage, I would say. This capture here is foolishly aggressive. It's a minor mistake, but I'll lose the infantry for nothing, basically. I had an idea that it'd kind of be bait and help lure enemy vehicles into range, and maybe be in position to scout a little bit next turn if it lived, but it wasn't a good idea. Have to use a tank to scout. It's unfortunate, but it works. And I get a great first strike there. She took the bait, so she gets wrecked. And her anti-air is exposed too, so here comes the tank, there goes the anti-air, and the copper can bring it down to 1 HP. Pretty good. Now, I'm not getting too exuberant here, I'm not getting carried away. I know that the opponent has her superpower, and it's devastating, so I make sure to stay out of range of that as much as possible. So I just trade a position where a few of my vehicles are in range of anything that I know that she has, or that she plausibly could have. I build a very late anti-air here up top, and I think I stand by that decision for this match. If the enemy sent battlecopters into the top, I really don't care for this strategy. She's welcome to do that. Nothing was really on the line up there, and at that point I could just build an anti-air. But now I'm moving forces into the middle, and she could bring her copter down there to cause problems, and I can't allow that. So now I'm building an anti-air to be ready for middle protection. I also know that my double MD tanks might tempt her to build a bomber, and I want to have a ready-made counter for that in position already. I build a fresh artillery too to replace the one that's about to die. So, the anti-air gets a little bit lucky there, attacking without the superpower and killing me anyway, but it doesn't really matter. And then here comes the Max Blast. I'm gonna get pummeled. There'll be plenty of instant kills to go around this turn. Her damage recon can't actually kill anything even with Max Blast. A lot of infantry will die up top, but that doesn't make that big a difference to me. In my game against Starduster slaughtered my infantry with Max Blast, but couldn't get enough vehicles, and therefore lost, even though it seemed devastating at the time. And this Max Blast is a lot less painful than that one. Basically no vehicles killed. She also reveals a copter up there, which is useful for me to know. That 2 movement bonus is pretty sweet, even if it's just being used to get repairs. Lots of repairing to do after the damage taken last turn. And she's forced to build her own MD tank. An understandable choice, but one I was expecting. So I'm feeling good. On this turn I almost went for my superpower, but I did the math and realized I wasn't actually certain I could get it, unless I sacrificed this copter to that anti-air, which I could do. It can be worthwhile to sacrifice a unit to get your superpower earlier, especially as Eagle. But in this case I think not. In this case there's really not any kind of hurry. She's already used her superpower, which is the main threat she had left. I no longer have any reason not to take my time. My income is fine, and she can't use the threat of a super to endlessly push me backward. So I should just build up. The more vehicles, the more build up, the better for me. I think she made a big mistake using Max Blast last turn. I'm sure it looked tempting, all those infantry kills and things like that, but it really wasn't worth it. She threw away her trump card there. In that circumstance where she still has her superpower left, that's the kind of case where I might actually sacrifice a unit to get Lightning Strike first. If you can get a Lightning Strike done before the first Max Blast, or the first Winter Fury or whatever, that's amazing. But anyway, I just go for safe moves here. I interrupt captures with infantry, the cheapest way to do it. Once again, I'm using infantry as bait. I know they're probably going to die, but to lure max vehicles into a position where I can just slaughter them with mine next turn. I just need to hang on for another couple of turns while I build up a little bit more. Doesn't need to be forever. My MD tank on the raid here is a little bit of a risk. It's positioned where it can't be scouted easily by the opponent. The mountain can't reveal it, other convenient scouting locations can't reveal it, so that's great. And I also did the math, and I know that even if the opponent had an MD tank that they moved with Max Blast last turn off the factory, it can't be in a position to attack me here. But a Neo tank last turn, or an MD tank the turn before last turn, that's another problem. Being caught on the road by one of those would be terrible. It would have been less bad to sit in that city instead, but there I could have been scouted. I did want my location to be a mystery. So once again, the artillery is not completely useless, because I will say that the fact that it was there did force me to be a little bit cautious with my MD tank. If it was just pure tanks over there, I would have just run right on in and started wrecking them. Still, even as a deterrent, I don't really think it was worth building. As I mentioned, even scouting from that mountain cannot reveal my MD tank, so I get to stay hidden over here. But it might have still been wiser to go for the city and been revealed but been safer. Not really sure. All the bait is working. Max is charging vehicles in right where I want them, where I can superpower them all to death if I want to. Very good for me. So is the general delayed entry of those vehicles into the middle. If they'd been there a couple of turns ago, it would have been a bit more of a problem for me. My armies are also starting to consolidate in the middle. If I'm left to my own devices for another turn, I'll group them up into one more or less unassailable moving fortress of units. Or maybe two masses of units in the same area where they can support each other, just kind of depending on what the enemy's formation seemed to be like. Okay, so at this point, my superpower is easily attainable. A ton of Trash Queen's units are right where I want them to. I could delay and build up for another turn, but this is about the best chance I'll ever be getting. I can't really hope for more units being exposed than this. I also do need to stop those captures of my cities, so I begin with scouting, of course, to make sure nothing is going to surprise me and ruin all my plans here. Humiliatingly, my copter takes out the anti-air there. I built this recon last turn in anticipation that I would need scouts for my superpower, and it's working. It's also a cheap defense of the comm tower if she decides to go for it again while my units are in the middle. My black boat gets a double repair this turn. And I do make a mistake with that tank. I move it too far north. I had this idea that Trash Queen might have another vehicle up there in the fog that I would then scout out and kill, but she didn't really have one, and it would have been better to go for the sure things down in the middle. Help against one of her tanks or her artillery or something like that. I didn't really go for the maximum amount of vehicle destruction per se. Kind of a balance of destroying vehicles versus killing infantry and things like that at the same time. I'm not certain that was the right move, but I did feel the need to remove some of her infantry so she couldn't capture as many things. Now, superficially, I'm still not in a great position. Max could do a crushing counterattack.
Use your last pathetic cop so I can end this, Eagle.
I have no pathetic cop, Max. Oh wait, down switch to lightning drive, fair point. But I also have this! The unstoppable lightning strike! So, here comes the second half of the turn. Up top I scout and see, oh, there is nothing up there, so my tank is going to be pretty useless after all. I kill the copter. Because the tank is useless, I can't now have it finish off this artillery that I just revealed, but oh well. These first strikes clear a path to wipe out the anti-air. Boom. More scouting. Oh hey, empty tank. Well, guess what? Copter wall. Now I knew of course that if she had another anti-air down there, this wouldn't work very well. She would break through pretty easily. But the odds of that are small, when she already had 2 anti-airs down there that I killed both of this turn. Having 3 anti-airs in that one area would be pretty silly. Using the units that you just built this turn is one of the most fun things about Eagle superpower, I would say. I could have gone for the artillery over there, but I thought, you know, a max tank is more important than a max artillery. It can shoot my MV tank, but that's not the end of the world. There is a black boat nearby, and it's an injured max artillery. As you can see, this one maneuver wiped out almost half of Trash Queen's entire army value. So, I was not too surprised when she resigned immediately. So, it was a fun match, I'd say. That turnabout is of course typical for Eagle vs Max games where Eagle's winning, but I do feel proud that I had already stabilized things before the superpower came out. To be ahead in combat damage against Max feels like an accomplishment. It was also interesting to have this match right after the previous one, where last time I was Max with 2 comm towers, this time I'm fighting Max with 2 comm towers. I think, as I said, my strategy was a pretty good one, and I had pretty good tactics on most days, I would say. But pretty much everything I ever did with that top tank, especially building it, was just stupid. All these mistakes, of course, just go to show how much I still have to learn about this game. I'll just keep trying to improve, and hope that I do so faster than my opponents do. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the match. Have a great day, everyone!